everyone. All right, we are live. I'm going to go ahead and present, and then we're just going to go ahead and start looking at some of the questions that you posted. So, right here in the stream, I posted the energy questions. I created a Google Doc. The first two pages are the 12 individuals who actually submitted their notes with the questions as of yesterday. If you did it after I looked at it, you know, I didn't include them here because, again, I don't like doing things twice. So these are all the questions here. And then the third page was from a couple of the students in the other physics class. Um, this first one, right off the bat, I think is very, very relevant is you going out into the future again is if there are regulations about creating, which is it's an oxymoron, but they call it clean coal. Um, yes, I mean that cost is going to be passed on to you, the consumer. I mean, the one thing that struck me about this reading, it a lot of the points in the reading were hit on in Switch. So again, if you're looking at that carbon capture technology, where it could cost companies $300 to $400 million to implement, companies do not like absorbing additional costs, so they're going to go ahead and pass that on to the consumer. So that is a real concern. And again, the whole idea of something called clean coal is, it's very oxymoronic because you're still putting carbon into the atmosphere, and we know that we're doing too much of that already. Um, this next question, again, looking at materials. So again, if we are going into trying to use renewable resources, why are those materials so expensive? Well, again, a lot of these are new markets, with building a lot of these wind turbines and starting to build solar panels. Again, they're still niche markets, markets that have only been around for 20, 30 years. So again, it goes back to this idea of supply and demand. If there's not enough companies out there producing it, the cost is still going to be high. One thing I've looked at is at the southern state, I get full sun on my house. My house runs north and south, so I get full sun on. I've got a little A-frame, so on the one side you get the sun rising in the morning, and then on the west side you get it in the afternoon. And I've looked into solar panels, and not only are they actually still pretty expensive for an everyday Joe, but they don't even install the solar panels in the area I live in. So again, it's going to take time, but again, a lot by the time you guys are buying houses, things hopefully should come down. This next question here: how is mechanical energy turned into electricity? Is again, you're using all these resources. You're using hydroelectric, you're using dams, you're using coal, natural gas, nuclear. The whole point is you're looking to heat water to use that steam to move a turbine, which is basically an electromagnet, which is producing the electricity. I will mention that we're going to look at that more into detail when we come back after break. Our first unit will be waves, and then we'll be moving into electric current, electricity. So we'll be spending about 3 weeks in each of those units. This next question about AC DC is we'll look at those in detail too. The reading itself looked at the competition between Thomas Edison, who came up with direct current, and then Tesla, who came up with alternating current. In an interesting thing, it wasn't until the World's Fair in 1893, that was right here in Chicago, that most companies, most towns settled on using AC. So again, if we're looking at just AC as the main, I mean, it's really on what is its history now. That would be what, 127 years. But obviously, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that happened to Tesla and people should be revering him as much as Edison, but history hasn't been so kind to Nikolai Tesla. Um, First of all, this next question, 100% carbon emission, that's just never going to happen. You're not going to be able to capture all of it. Really, what we're trying to do in our climate crisis now is just trying to reduce the amount of carbon. This just goes back to the author. Again, I mentioned this book is about, it's called Around the Block. Just looking at everything we kind of take for granted. He was just kind of again, looking at sewers, roads, bike lanes, how we get our electricity to the houses. So it actually is a very interesting read. Um, how many people does a coal burning plant power? That was, again, the whole point of Switch, where you look at a single plant only powers a certain um, number of people or a certain area. And again, um, I think it made mention there's like 60 some odd thousand different coal or electricity plants around the world. Again, you're limited by distance too. Let's take a look. Somebody had a question about a battery. I did want to point this out. So if you're looking at the power that's in a battery, I posted a video here from the physics girl that if you want to at least start watching, that's something we can look at if we can ever get our hands on, where you're using lines to, create electricity. And again, you just need a couple of electrodes, a positive and a negative. And really, what limits that power in the battery, or how does it go bad? I know that was another question, is on the positive plates in your batteries, they start to corrode, so they can't conduct that electricity anymore. That's why we have to replace batteries in cars every so often. Let's take a look. Obviously, this is a Mills question here at the bottom of page 1, trying to look at supermassive objects in space to create energy. Again, those are the ideas that spark conversation. One person that pushed those boundaries are Elon Musk, who now runs, obviously, Tesla, the car company. Him and his cousin started they're using solar panels and solar electricity. So again, he's really pushing the boundaries. Now, obviously, SpaceX trying to get us to Mars. So it's these kind of questions and those types of individuals who wind up actually possibly putting the conversation into the future. Uh, Starting on page 2, is there a way we can go solar all across the U.S.? And obviously, no, you can't. Um, Obviously, you're dependent on the amount of sunshine. In certain areas near the equator get more than others. And then the other thing is, think of natural disasters. So thinking of, I was 9 years old when Mount St. Helens erupted in the state of Washington, and that covered most of the Northeast for many, many weeks. So if you wind up having any kind of natural disaster like that, clearly you're not going to be able to harness the power of the sun for quite a while. Um, let's moving on. This one here, what kind of impact does the LNS King power plant have on? Well, again, any kind of energy creation plants can have an effect on the wildlife. Here's a question. Let's see if somebody can chime in quick. Is where is this taking place? Where is this reading? Where's this guy from? Can anyone stop and put in keywords to find out where the LNS King power plant is? Another hint.
Minnesota.
Oh, somebody did do it. Nice, yeah. So we're looking at the St. Croix River. So let's go to this one here. So here actually is that power plant right on that St. Croix River. And then if you actually look a little bit more, he did reference the Anderson Window Company here. So again, looking at when these early coal plants, obviously they were dependent on water. So they had to be around rivers, right? So then you can follow the St. Croix River down to where it meets the Mississippi. And then again, they mentioned where some of the early coal was coming from the hills of Kentucky. Obviously, that coal was being shipped by barge in to the power plant, and then that was providing the electricity for Minneapolis and St. Paul in their infancy. Um, Another question we had is, why did they switch to the low sulfur coal? And that's out in that Powder River Basin. And again, that has to do with environmental regulations, right? Having companies either doing it on their own, trying to be responsible, or through government regulation, trying to make the air cleaner around these larger cities. So they went out to the Powder River Basin out here in eastern Wyoming, and this is exactly where it is. This is what we saw from Switch, and you can actually zoom in, and what you see is, you can kind of tell, but you saw from the video that these are all levels. So this is probably about 100 150 feet into the ground. And then these were the pathways all of those large, what they called Tonka trucks, were using to get the coal out, eventually get them on the trains. And again, right now, this Powder River Basin is supplying 40% of the coal in all of the U.S. Let's go back here. How much do the megawatt wind turbines cost? Again, I know they're in the millions of dollars. I can tell you that. And again, they're going to cost more based on the fact that there's not a lot of companies out there that build them. So again, the cost is going to be high. Let's look at here. All right, this one here, I think this question here I'm pointing at, will electricity become a substitute? I think there's a little misunderstanding here. Again, you need something that produces electricity. And how you do that is, again, you're turning turbines, which is basically an electromagnet, to create it. So you have to have something as your source on the end. Obviously, because of carbon, we want to try to move away from coal. Natural gas is cleaner than coal. Nuclear, again, in a lot of people's opinion, including mine, is even cleaner overall than natural gas. But again, a lot of people don't want to deal with nuclear because of some what happened in Japan. That's always in the back of their mind. But again, as long as nuclear has been around, the amount of accidents have been minimal. Another thing would be, again, hydro, using water dams if you can, or again, solar and wind. But those are the end sources to produce that. Let's just finish up here. A couple more questions. So this one here, this last question, I'm going to hit this and then I'll do one more here. How long is the coal burning process from it being excavated to when it is finally converted into energy? So again, I think you're asking a question that was clearly stated in Switch when you looked at the Powder River Basin. Basically, as soon as it's coming out of the ground, it's being loaded onto those trains, and then as soon as those trains are set in motion, they're being spread out, fanned out to whichever coal firing plants are going to use them. Now, I do know that a lot of these plants, like the L&S King plant, they have a reserve. I forget what the number was, but there's so many days that if they never got another train load, that they can fire the plant for X amount of days. But again, I'd say from out of the ground to actually being burned, less than 3 months. So again, think about that. Millions of years to create the actual coal, and then it comes out of the ground and it's going to be used up and converted back into carbon gas in the atmosphere in less than 3 months. And let's go to this question here. What does it mean to be in a maternity ward? Does nobody know what a maternity ward is? All right. Anyways, that's just obviously where things are born. Obviously, you were born in a maternity ward, or it could be referenced if you're talking about an idea that is in its infancy. So again, like this student here that's talking about massive objects out in outer space, again, that would be considered an idea in its maternity, in the very beginning. Who knows what will happen? Maybe Mr. Mills will create something to save our electrical generation in the future. All right, there are a couple of things I mentioned here that will come back in that quiz form tomorrow. Hopefully you paid attention. Again, does anyone have any questions on potential kinetic energy before you go? I know some of you are still working on your sheets. Any questions on potential or kinetic energy?
Nope.
Oh, okay. That only took 30 seconds. Thank you for that. Again, tomorrow, or you'd want to finish those questions. You're going to have just a small little assessment tomorrow on simple machines, potential and kinetic energy, and then I'll have some questions from the reading and this conversation. So, other than that, have a good day, and we will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow will be the last assignment, and then you'll get your review on Friday. So, have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good day.
All right, thanks.